Hello and welcome to Controversial Convictions. This is your host, Bethany. And today we're going to be covering two cases. The case of Gracie Sasso, the murder of Gracie Sasso Cleveland down in DeKalb, Illinois. And about a month later, the murder of Brittany Battaglia in Chicago. Okay, so first we're going to go over Gracie. Gracie, I actually know her. She babysat my son, and I know her family, and she was a good person. It's freaking tragic that these things happen. But Gracie was reported missing on May 6th, okay, by her family. Her mom said that there was some confusion between her dad and her. Her dad thought she was with her mom. Her mom thought she was with her dad, and neither were correct. So Gracie was reported missing on May 6th, and she was found on May 7th. And she had just found out, her and her mother had just found out that her boyfriend, she was seeing a man who was a registered sex offender, and he was 29 years old, and she's 15, so highly illegal. After her body was found, the coroner determined that she had died from asphyxiation, and her body was dumped into a dumpster. Yeah, unfortunately. So what happened was there was an argument, and this comes from Timothy Dahl, by the way, is the man who killed Gracie, allegedly, but even though he confessed. Timothy Dahl is his name, and what he says happened was there was a fight that night, on May 4th, and he got on top of her and suffocated her with a pillow. A neighbor heard some screams, and apparently recorded it on his phone or something, and I believe the police do have that video now, but it said, "Help, I can't breathe, I just want to go home," or "Give me my phone, I can't breathe, I just want to go home." She didn't say help, but she said those three things, and then it stopped. I am told that the police were called and shown the recording that that neighbor took of her screaming, "I just want my phone, I want to go home, I can't breathe." He showed the police that recording, and the police didn't hear anything when they got there, so they didn't knock, they just left. And they didn't hear anything because she was already dead, unfortunately. Timothy Dahl has admitted to then tossing out her belongings, putting them in his basement in a laundry basket, and then taking her body and dumping it in a dumpster adjacent to his house. So she was found on May 7th in that dumpster, and it's a very sad story. There were a couple bond hearings that nothing came about them. They were just continued for like 3 or 4 days in a row. And then he was finally held with no bond. Like first there was a transfer of judges. It went from circuit court Judge Marcy Buick to circuit court Judge Pedersen in DeKalb County, Illinois. So he is now seeing Judge Pedersen for this case. And he actually, he could face a longer sentence because of some previous crimes that he has done. In 2020, he actually pled guilty. Well, didn't plead guilty. In 2020, he was arrested for almost the same thing. He did something, he sexually assaulted another girl, raped her, and recorded it. And he was charged with child pornography and aggravated sexual abuse. The child pornography charge was dropped, and that would have been the charge that would have kept him in jail for a longer amount of time. The victim in that case was only 14, and he would have been 26 or 27 at the time. I don't know his birthday, so don't care to. But he would have been 26 or 27, being that it happened in 2020. However, it took 3 years actually now for his plea deal to come down and for him to finally register as a sex offender. He registered as a sex offender about 3 weeks before Gracie was murdered. He finally took a plea deal, which gave him time served. And that time served was on his electronic home monitoring bracelet, house arrest. And you have to pay a fine each day for those. When you're wearing them, you have to pay the courts to have it, actually. And his attorney said that the only violation on his case for that 2020 case was not being able to pay the EHM fees. So at his bond hearing, when he finally was held with no bail, the assistant state's attorney stepped forward and said, no, that is not the only violation, because he was in an active dating relationship with Gracie at the time of the murder. So that's breaking a law, you being in contact with a minor, right? So and also I hate when they call it a dating relationship, because she was 15 years old. This guy groomed her. They were not dating. He groomed her, okay? There's a difference. So Timothy Dahl is now being held without bond. His next hearing is actually going to be Wednesday the 14th, the day after tomorrow. And that will be his arraignment. He's going to be indicted in front of the grand jury. He'll plead guilty, not guilty, reason of insanity, whatever. I have been told he's going to plead not guilty, though, and there will be a trial. I don't know how that's going to go, being that he confessed, but we'll see. So yes, he is being held without bail, and immediately following his arraignment on the 14th, there is going to be a big protest out on the DeKalb County Courthouse lawn. Men Against Monsters, Allies for Justice, that's kind of the movement that we're calling it. We are trying to get these laws here in Illinois changed for domestic and sex abusers, because when I tell you my next story here, you'll see why. Okay, so we're going to move into the story now of Brittany Battaglia. Okay, now Brittany she was a young woman. She was 33 years old. Okay, she was reported missing on May 4th. She told her roommate that she was going to visit her boyfriend, Genesis Silva, who is a 34-year-old sex offender in Chicago, and that after that she would be attending a party. And she had a flight scheduled for the next day, so her roommate was expecting her home. She never returned home. So her roommate contacted her brother, AJ, and AJ was able to find out that she had turned off her location sharing on her phone, so nobody could see where she was at, and that was highly unusual for her. So she was reported missing by her brother and her roommate slash best friend. She was found the next day on May 5th. And they were gonna go question Genesis about it, right? And they pull up to his house and they see him driving away, and he has a backpack with him. So they pull him over a few blocks away and they escort him back to his house. When they get inside the house, he sets his backpack down, and the police, they see some stuff. They see a duffel bag and some other stuff in the kitchen, and they decide to secure that area as a crime scene. Okay, and ask Genesis to wait outside, because it is a crime scene now. They don't want it to be tampered with or anything to be messed up. So Genesis waited outside for a couple minutes, and then he was found trying to sneak back into his apartment from a rear entryway. So he was taken into custody at that point. I don't know if he was charged with anything officially, but he was taken into custody, I'm sure, for obstructing an ongoing investigation or something of the sort. However, so when they picked up that backpack that Genesis had on him, it had a machete with the presence of blood on it. I don't believe it's been confirmed yet, but you couldn't see the blood with your eyes, but FBI forensics, they were able to tell that it was human blood on there. So they're just waiting for DNA results to come back from that. So they found an ice pick and a machete in that backpack. When they did some further investigation, they found that the duffel bag they saw contained Brittany's body, and her head was nearly decapitated off of her. Yes, so, and the coroner determined that she died from multiple sharp force stab wounds. So she was stabbed multiple times, and then stuffed into that duffel bag. Okay, so Genesis has not been charged with her murder yet. I believe they're just waiting to be sure for the results to come back, the DNA results on the knives and the weapons that they found. But he has been charged with concealment of a homicide, which is a very serious charge, and unlawful use of a weapon by a felon. He is being held on no bail, and his next hearing is on June 20th. So we want some people to go protest out there as well. So if you live in the Chicago area, and you can go protest at the Cook County Courthouse if you're against sexual abuse, be there. So I want to say how this relates to Gracie's case is because, as I said, he was a registered sex offender. He was convicted in 2009 of aggravated sexual abuse, using force actually to his wife, and attempted murder. Yeah, so I believe the attempted murder charge was dropped, and he only ended up serving 2 years probation for trying to kill and raping his wife at the time. So yeah, that just goes to show you that sex offenders, they go out and they reoffend, they do. And lots of times it leads to murder. So we need stricter laws here in Illinois for sex offenders and domestic abusers, because this is just what it leads to. I mean, look at DeKalb County a few years ago. I don't know how many of you would know about this or remember, but one of the assistant state's attorneys was killed by her husband in front of her daughter, domestic abuse. And the county made a pretty big deal about it at that time, but no laws were changed. So we are trying to change them. And this protest that we have going on, like I said, that's our first step. We have some people working with the county board, and someone is working on writing up a law to present to Congress called Gracie's Law, if it's passed. And that'll be, again, for harsher penalties for sex offenders and domestic abusers. So this is it's a pretty wild case. It's not just Illinois either. It's national. This happens everywhere, but this is just where we live. So this is the only place that we can do something about it right now anyways. So yes, we will continue to keep you guys updated on both stories, and thank you for listening. Have a good day.